Welcome to the Mystic Detectives podcast, where we seek to unlock the wonders of the unknown. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal Miller.
And I'm your other host, Andrea Marziano. How are you doing today, Crystal?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome.
Oh, my goodness.
So what have you been up to?
Oh, man. Well, for work, I've been up to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. For relaxing, been playing some video games with my kids.
Oh, you poor thing. I'm a real serious gamer. I have my 3 games on my phone. I never pay for anything. I play for about 12 minutes, which is my extension span, and then I move on. It's funny because my kids have never been real gamers either. I think for a while, my son, Joshua, played, what was that, way long
Grand
ago.
Theft Auto. He taught my kids Grand Theft Auto.
Did he?
And
he also played Zelda for a while, and I tried to get into it, but I just get bored. I'm like, yay, okay, I'm done. But it's funny that we use things like that to relax. I typically will read, and my partner Max is always like, "What are you reading now?" And he said, "Are you still on that book?" And I said, "No, that was 4 books ago," because I read pretty fast. And so, anyway, it's good. I think that we all have some sort of outlet. Well, interesting. Yeah. I love talking to you about what you do in your games. And I remember I was watching you one time, had no idea what was happening, but it was quite a lot.
It's true. I didn't used to play video games until, to be frank, I was dating someone and he was a gamer and he wanted to play games with me and I was terrible at it. And I would play games and my character would be doing this and he'd be like, "If you cannot play, I'm going to vomit." So I decided to teach myself to be better, and here I am.
There you are. If gaming could be a job, it is for some people, though, isn't it?
Some people, not for me.
No. Anyway, well, awesome. Well, that's the other thing I do for relaxation is I do a lot of stretching, and I have a hanging silk set, and I really like to do that, and that's really fun for me. Yeah, I like to be cuddled in my silk hammock. So that's a lot of fun for me too. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, why don't we get to our guest and let him introduce himself?
Hi there. Right. My name is Matt. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks for coming.
Glad to have you. Thanks for coming.
Of course. I'm thrilled to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt.
So technically I'm a psychic medium. I kind of have my little witchy woo part of me, but I also work part-time at the library downtown in Salt Lake City. And so I do readings and Reiki for clients part-time, and then I work at the library part-time. It's honestly a very properly cute gig that I have.
What do you do at the library? I've always wondered what librarians do, except for stack books.
Oh, well, there's all of that, of course, but it's so much more than that. For instance, I work in the teen lounge a lot. We have a lot of teens who come after school. They play Roblox. That's their favorite thing, to play on the computers. We do after school snacks. I just designed this fun little scavenger hunt that they can do that I'll kind of change it up weekly. I make displays for books that go around the library. I actually do, this is kind of fun. I do a monthly an Instagram video for the library where I do Zodiac book recommend videos. They're kind of cheesy. So I'll act out the Zodiac, the personality, so I'm about to do my Scorpio one. And it's going to be I'm kind of moody and mysterious, like a Scorpio. And then I actually talk about books that I think Scorpios would like. And
hey, guess who's a Scorpio? I just had my birthday.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a true Scorpio?
I am on the cusp of Libra and Scorpio. It's October 24th.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have a lot of features from both, which is interesting. And maybe it's just because I pick the best ones from each and call them good, right?
You know what? I'm the same because I'm between Taurus and Gemini, so I kind of claim the best of both of them.
Sure. Why wouldn't we?
Oh my gosh, I'm the opposite. I'm right in the middle of Capricorn, January 1st.
You can't really go anywhere else.
Not only that, I don't know if you care about birth charts, but I'm actually Capricorn, Aquarius.
Wow.
So I have 2 Capricorns, and
so you're probably super organized then. Maybe
let's
not.
just say I know where everything is.
Yes. There's a method to your madness.
Yes.
This is true. Hey, Matt, have you seen that guy Michael who does his library reels? He's in Oakland, I believe, Oakland, California.
I think I have
And
once, actually.
I
This is sounding familiar. Yes.
I really enjoy him because he's all about inclusion, and he has an afro that he
Oh,
said
yep,
for
yep.
most of
I've
his
seen him.
yeah. So most of his life he did not embrace the afro. He hated it and stuff like that, but he realized that was just such a big part of himself that he wanted to start embracing it. And he talks about the interactions he has with the kids and stuff, and it's been really interesting. And he's talked about the programs he does at the library, which again I had no idea even happened because I frankly haven't been in a library for quite a while. There you
There's a
go.
master's degree in library science, Andrea.
I had no idea it was even a possibility. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Oh, but you know what? Have you seen the glass wall by the library for the donors,
Uh-huh.
the organ
Yeah.
donors? My granddaughter's on that.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's so sweet.
Yeah. Zendaya Suki Peterson. If you look for her, she's kind of in the center, and there's a picture of her too. So anyway, I haven't been there since that dedication of the wall, actually. And
Yeah.
I went for that. So anyway, I digress. But what else do you have on your plate? This is a mystics podcast, and so far we haven't talked much about that, but you touched on it a little bit. But what's your story? Tell us a little bit about yourself with
Oh my
that.
goodness. So, that's I have a lot that I could share, but I do readings with clients part-time, and kind of how I got into being a medium. There's so many different levels to that. But something really big that actually has even propelled me even more into this side of myself. I was in actually a really severe accident 2.5 years ago where I almost died. In fact, there's a part of me, it keeps coming to me. I'm like, I feel like I might have died for just a moment and came back. It's just this feeling that keeps coming back. But it's been a long healing recovery process. And in that experience, I learned how to tap in even deeper, not only just to my own body through meditation, but into my gifts. And then it's helped me with clients to actually really connect with people and to read energy, to feel what's going on in their bodies, in their hearts, in their mind, in their spirit. And also, it's actually helped me to connect to the other side. And it's wild because it kind of weirds me out sometimes, but I'll have clients come and if they have an object that belonged to a loved one that passed away, and if I hold it, I can actually connect with that person and get messages from them. And it kind of scares me a little, because I'm I don't know how this fully works, but I'm feeling it. And it's only been since I myself was on the verge of death that this has really propelled even further.
What do you attribute that to? Why do you think your gift became more magnified? Do you have any idea?
That's a really great question, and I have theories. I spent so much time learning how to heal because I literally I broke my entire body actually, in this really traumatic, awful way. And I was in a hospital for a long time. Then I was in a rehab center for a long time. Then I actually lived in an assisted living center with all elderly people for a couple months and was wheelchair bound. And when you can't move and you're just laying in a bed, just for a few weeks, because I had so many surgeries on my spine and all different things, I couldn't even roll over for a while. And so when you have nothing but your mind, you learn how to go inward, especially because my pain was so severe. All I could do was just close my eyes and just go as deep inward as I could, because my body no longer worked. And as a result, I think I just learned how to really connect in ways that were so deep that I don't think I had ever tapped into before. And I learned how to connect with my higher self and how to connect with the universe, with spiritual guides. And I was just constantly help me figure out, how do I heal this body? How do I learn how to walk again? How do I learn how to maneuver? And there was a giant betrayal that was part of this accident as well. And there was heartbreak, and there was just all these hideous things. And my career tanked. Everything that could be broken broke all at once. And so I think I just spent so many months going deep within that I unlocked something very special.
Wow, that's amazing. I had a cancer experience in 2009, and I have always had some different types of gifts. And I noticed for me that they also got stronger then too. I wasn't nearly as on the brink as you were, but I noticed, I don't know the best way to describe it, but I felt like it was an opportunity that I could open more than I had ever been. And maybe it's because I had no control over things. And do you relate to that? Or
There's totally something about like just surrendering, because in that moment, I'm like, I physically cannot move this body. I cannot physically help what has happened to me, or, you know, what happened with this other individual. Like, I cannot help the fact that my entire life has shattered and from one day to the next. And so all I can do is just surrender and be present to what's going on right now. And so it really taught me, and it's interesting because I learned how to connect with my body in such a deep way. And I started to actually treat my body almost like it was my best friend, where I would talk to my body. I'm like, body, what are you feeling right now? What's going on? Why are we in so much pain? And like my body would start to talk back, and it'd be like, I'm grieving right now. I'm sad right now. I'm upset right now. And I just allow myself to just feel these emotions over and over again. And it's interesting because I had this selenite wand that I would hold in my right hand every day when I was in the hospital bed. And I would imagine it was actually like a magic wand. And even though I couldn't like move very much, I would imagine pointing this wand to all the different parts of my body that were broken. And I had head trauma as well, and just everything that was going on. And I would imagine just light from like, you know, the universe or the heavens, if you will, just coming down through this wand, sending it through to all the different parts of my body that were broken. And I would imagine my spine, like the bones coming back together. You know, I would imagine my foot like coming back together. My arm was totally shattered into so many different pieces, and it was just all metal at one point. Like there was just so many broken bones in there. And so I'd imagine everything just coming back together. My body fusing with the metal, and the metal becoming a natural part of me. And I would just encourage my body. And like I truly feel like I just finally just tapped into something, and I started to improve pretty rapidly, considering like all that I went through. So it was pretty wild.
that's intense. Crystal and I are both nurses as well. Crystal, have you ever taken care of a patient who was in that sort of a condition?
Well, not that exact same condition, but yes, I have taken care of very broken and bedbound, immobile patients.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice, because I know when I've taken care of people like that, I think they tend to go one way or the other. I never noticed anybody being sort of neutral in how they were responding to things. I noticed that people would get very, very angry, or they would get quite introspective. Did you notice that too?
Or resigned, I think, actually. So my most tragic patient, if you will, I was a wound care specialist, so I did lots of wounds, and I will try not to be too graphic, so it's not gross, but she had a very large wound on her thigh, and it was just very large. And then she was also a large woman, and so her pannus, or I don't even know what you call it in not medical words, but her big stomach overhang sat on that wound, and she just would not participate with the care of it. She just resigned. She resigned to have this wound continue to grow and get worse and more painful, and eventually she died from sepsis because she just said, there's no hope. But I have also seen people that, oh man, I've seen some people in physical therapy that it's like, no, I'm not a physical therapist. I'm a nurse that would refer people, or not even refer, but make sure they did their physical therapy. But I've seen people that, well, honestly, Andrea is the example of this, that they are serious about their physical therapy and nothing's going to stop them. And they end up, instead of being, walking 12 weeks later, they're walking 6 weeks later. And I think that is all about, it's all about just being in tune with your body and understanding that you don't have to give up.
Yeah. And for the example you're giving of some of the things that I've had, I think what you're describing too, Matt, I've done as well, where I had an issue with my heart, and the left atrium, left side of my heart was enlarged 75% over what it should have been. And the doctor said that will never return back to normal. I said, oh, really?
Mhm. Yeah, I kind of
And
adopted that same attitude.
hmm And so I actually, even though I'd been a nurse for 20 years, I still, at the time, it had been 20 years, I still looked online and I found a picture of a heart and I watched a video of a heart beating the way it was supposed to. And it was the right size and everything else. And I envisioned my heart doing what it was supposed to do correctly every single day, all day long. I would think about it. I would visualize it. You know, I do other stuff too. I didn't just sit there the whole time thinking about my heart, but between the things I was doing, I was very conscious of it. And 3 months later, it was actually not long before I moved here to Washington. The doctor wanted to see me one more time before I came up so he could tell the next doctor what the condition was. And when I got there, I had the imaging done and my left atrium was back to normal size.
Wow.
And he said, well, I can't believe that happened because he thought it would never happen. And I said, well, I knew it would. And he said, what have you been doing? And I told him, and it was funny because he's like, okay, sure. Well, whatever, keep doing it. And so
Hmm.
even though he wasn't committed to this visualization or, using a selenite wand, which is kind of a similar sort of thing, just using a physical representation, like I did with the video and the pictures.
Hmm.
I feel like our body is very strong and able to do those sorts of things. So that's really interesting. And then when you started feeling more connected with these gifts, actually, let me backtrack for just 1 second.
Hmm.
Do you
Sure.
feel do you feel like you've had the gifts for being a medium or clairvoyant or any of those sorts of things in your life, your whole life, or is it something that manifested later on for you?
That's a great question. I feel like I've always kind of been this way. When I was a little boy, I remember I used to see shadows moving on the walls, and sometimes I'd hear voices in my head that weren't mine. And it kind of scared me a little bit. I thought my house was haunted. And I remember telling my parents when I was younger, and they kind of just thought, oh, he just kind of has a good imagination. And I think as I became a teenager, I kind of turned all that off because I didn't really know what to do with it. And then it came back later in my life around, so I'm 38 now. So when I was in my late 20s, I moved to Sydney, Australia, and I ended up working at this haunted hotel that did ghost tours. And it's like one of the most severely haunted places in Australia. And it was like all of a sudden I started feeling things again. I started noticing things. And then by the time I was 30, it was like I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I actually kind of had a little bit of like a nervous breakdown because I was wondering if I was schizophrenic because I was starting to
Hmm.
hear voices again. I was starting to see things again. I would be woken up at night and there'd be like, like someone who'd passed away, like next to my bed, and I could see them in my mind's eye, and they're wanting to talk to me, and they're confused or they're scared. And I felt a lot like the little boy from Sixth Sense,
Hmm.
but I was like 30 years old. And so I
Hmm.
finally just leaned into it because the other option was to be hospitalized. And I met with the psychic medium, and she's like, you're not crazy. You're actually a medium. And when she said that to me, it was the most profound thing because I'd never used that term for myself ever, or even thought of myself as being that. But it just made so much sense. And so I started learning meditation. I started using oracle cards and tarot cards to kind of like make sense of all the chaos. And then I learned Reiki. But then it was when I was severely injured, this is what like really like launched it on an even deeper level.
That's amazing. Well, I found, and I think we've talked a little bit about this, Crystal, that the mediums that we've worked with have all learned Reiki as well. And
Yeah.
we wondered if that was a gateway skill.
Hmm. It's
um,
something that just kind of naturally made sense for me because I would start
right.
doing readings with people and I'd start moving my hands in weird ways and I didn't know what I was doing and I couldn't help it. And it was like, and I finally realized I was grabbing their energy and shifting it and moving all the heaviness
Hmm.
out. But I was untrained in it and I didn't really know why I was doing it. And so then I
Hmm.
finally went and got certified and I finished up my certification right before I got injured.
Oh,
And
Wow.
that's
so
good.
then I had to put it to the test with myself. Like, and I'm like, okay, can I actually practice, what I was, what you preach? Can I actually learn this?
Hmm.
Because I remember being in the emergency room and the doctors they didn't know if I was paralyzed yet. And I didn't know
Hmm.
if I was. And I remember laying there thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, I may never walk again. And then this immediate thought came through, and I said, I don't care what they tell me. I'm going to heal this body and I will walk out of here. And yes, I
Hmm.
wasn't paralyzed, but I was wheelchair bound for quite some time, and I had to learn to walk. I lost all the fine motor skills in my left hand from all the nerve damage. I had to relearn how to use my hand again. So it was like being a
Wow.
toddler starting over, but I was so determined that like I will do this. I will like walk. I'm going to learn these things again. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to heal myself. And I have. And that's the
Yeah.
cool thing about it.
Do you think that comes from your gifts, or do you think that comes from, your personality, the way you were raised, a combination of all three?
That's a really great question. I think the determination came from I've been through some really difficult things in my life where I have felt like a victim at times. When I was a kid, there was, I'll just speak very lightly on it, but there was some sexual abuse. My parents didn't know about it. I grew up LDS, but I was gay. Being Mormon and being gay was very tricky. And then dealing with this medium stuff. And then like the thing with my accident, there was someone else involved, and it was because of this person that I was severely like injured. And then they walked out of my life as if I meant nothing. And left me to deal with all of it and all the consequences. And so I think I just got to this place where I was angry enough, where I was like, I am nobody's victim. I will not be a victim. I am not just some weak little thing. And I'm going to dig as deep as I can. And I'm going to prove to myself and to everyone around me that I am a conqueror and I'm a survivor. And that I'm going to come out like really out on top. And it's interesting, not that long ago I did a photo shoot with this gal to kind of represent the accident, and it was nice because like it was vulnerable for me. I was actually nude, but I had these big red wings and I wanted to be a phoenix rising, and I wanted to
my
show
gosh.
all my scars from my body. And it was so powerful because I'm like, I am a phoenix rising. I am no longer a victim to anyone else. I will come out on top no matter what happens.
Okay, Matt, I have to tell you, as you were talking about no longer being a victim, before you said anything, I completely pictured a red phoenix rising.
Ooh, that gives me chills.
Me
Ooh,
too.
that's
It's like, oh
synchronicity.
my gosh, because it just that's what I envisioned, and I even saw the wings on your back, and it was just. And then a few seconds later, you talked about being a red. Well, okay, alrighty then. Anyway,
Must be
that was
nice.
awesome. Well, Crystal has what's that called again?
Aphantasia.
Which is can't see it-itis.
Yeah, I'm
Interesting.
mind blind. I don't have a mind eye. I don't have I just everything, like I don't see pictures. I like if I keep saying this in every podcast, it's so dumb, but I'm obsessed. Everybody else says I just pictured this, and I'm like, must be nice. But like if you say picture an apple, it's all black for me. And I know an apple.
Wow.
I don't see an apple. If you say imagine a herd of horses are galloping at you, coming closer, I don't hear horses. I just know what horses sound like. So it's been a very interesting. I just discovered this a couple months ago, and it's been like I had no idea people saw pictures. No idea.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so
it is, because I can't imagine not.
even though I say it so silly, I like really do feel like must be nice. Like,
Yeah. Well, and to me, I mean, to know that about you, which I mean, we've known each other for 17 zillion years, and to know that about you that I didn't know, and it's interesting that you didn't even know, because you don't know what you're missing until you find out you do. But what I wonder is, and this is a question I'll kind of talk to you about too, Matt, is do you feel like you had other skills that developed because you couldn't see things, or did it ever cross your mind that way?
Oh, that's a good question. That was a tricky one. I'm kind of stumped. So I've always just been a very visual person. And honestly, when I started feeling, I'll say spirits or ghosts, for lack of a better word, again, when I was like 30, my late 20s and 30, I would like close my eyes and I could see them. I could see them very clearly with my mind's eye, and I could hear what they were saying. So it's always been such a part of me. But I've always been a very creative, artistic person, a very expressive person. I love color. I love pictures. I love art. I've always done photography for fun. And so for me, I've always been a very visual person. And when I connect with clients, and especially if I'm like connecting with a loved one who passed, it's very visual. A lot of times it's more visual than anything else. And I'm explaining what I'm seeing and what they're showing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people have other things that go with that. That's really interesting. And for you, Crystal, what do
Well,
you
the
think?
best way I can explain it is I just know it. It's so like, for example, if I'm doing a reading, which I haven't done in a very long time, but if I'm doing a reading, I just like, I basically open up my head
Crown?
chakra. I can't think what it's called right now.
Crown.
Crown, thank you.
Mhm.
Jesus. And let, just kind of let the energy in, let it flow. And then things just come to me. So it's just like suddenly I know something.
So if you can't see it, how does that appear for you? I mean, because I don't know about you, Matt, but I'm like, if I couldn't see it or hear it, I
For
don't
lack
know
of a
what I
better
would.
way to put it, as a thought. But I just know it's not my thought.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I am a Reiki master and I train people in Reiki. And some people will say, well, like you, Crystal, they say, well, I can't necessarily see that, or I can't hear anything or something. So I'm not as good. I'm like, no, it's not that. It's just about we all approach it differently. And I feel like one of the reasons we do is because then we connect with different people differently. Because if everyone was exactly the same in how those gifts are presented, then it wouldn't, I don't think it could connect to as many people. And so I find it fascinating. And I know we've talked about the kids, but my son Joshua will see color, and that means something to him when he does Reiki, but he can't say what. He just knows he sees color, and that's where he gets to work in their energy field or on their body. And so how does it manifest for you, Matt? Do you see colors or feel things, or how do you do that?
When I'm doing Reiki?
Or just even generally, if you see anything when you're doing readings or anything like that.
So I can actually relate a little bit to like just the knowing. Oftentimes when I'm sitting across from people, I'll have it happen a few different ways. Sometimes I actually will physically feel what they're feeling physically. Like I'll feel physical discomfort and I'm like, what's going on with your gut? Have you been having migraines? What's going on? So I can feel it physically, but then as they're talking, I just have this knowing of like, I know what it's connected to. I know what the emotion is. I know what it is that the pain is trying to say. And so then I actually will kind of start to like, I'll start to test ages. I'll be like, okay, at what point in their life did this start to manifest for them? Then I'll be like, okay, so what happened around this age, around like, why were you feeling like upset around this age? And and people are usually kind of shocked and they're like, oh, wow. So then as they start to talk it out, I can feel it physically. And so then I start to just kind of move my hands and I'm kind of just grabbing the energy and imagining putting it through this portal of light. And then usually like, I know when it's done because my body suddenly feels lighter. So then what I'll do is I'll have them close their eyes and I just do a very simple guided meditation where I bring light back in and I imagine filling their body up with light and putting the opposite emotion back in place. So if they were feeling anger, we'll put a feeling of calm around a certain memory or around a certain time of their life to kind of replace it. And then oftentimes though, I do see colors too. And so I attribute that to the chakras. And so sometimes in the meditations, I'll actually have them focus on a particular color. And I'm focusing on just kind of rebalancing that chakra. And oftentimes at the very end, I'll do another, like, just kind of a fun little, and I get very imaginative and creative. I have like about a zillion different meditations I do with people from like they're in a hot air balloon, they're like in a volcano, they're up on Mars, whatever. Like I have a million of them, but I'll do some sort of a fun meditation where I bring color in and I just slowly work on each chakra to just balance the chakras while they're just breathing and just listening to my words. So that's kind of my approach. It's very different from how I learned it traditionally from Reiki, but it's just what felt natural for me.
Right. And that's actually what I tell my students all the time. I attended a Reiki class with some friends of mine and they said, please come, you can sort of audit it and tell us what you think. And they were very regimented. You must do this, you must do that. If you don't, it's not going to work. And when I teach it, I teach the principles, I teach the flow, and I remind people that it's their intuition and spirit that guides them. So if they feel like they get to go different order, they do things differently, I encourage that because I feel like that's bringing in the spirit that's guiding us. Because I feel like if it's super regimented, then
it's going through the
to
motions.
me, it doesn't work.
Yeah, my teacher
Right.
was very much about Yes, we have a handbook. Yes, there are, processes we can teach you, etc. But it is not a rigid, you absolutely should go with your intuition and what comes up for your client, or, and so she actually frequently would warn us against regimented Reiki teachers.
Yeah, and we had the same teacher, so
Yeah,
it's
good
true.
point, we did.
And I feel like that the people who I want to say flex their gift, if that makes sense, and really lean into it, are bringing more of spirit guides, angels, however a person likes to call it, into the session, especially if the practitioner is actually in a relaxed and comfortable state. So we were talking earlier before we started recording, something I think our podcast listeners would be interested in is when you do your sessions, there's got to be times, or even just life generally, there's got to be times where you feel uncomfortable or you're having a human experience. What do you do to shift energy that doesn't feel comfortable to you? What are the tools you use for yourself on a daily basis, or even just whenever you need it?
Oh, I like that. Okay, so I have a few things that I do. So usually first thing in the morning when I wake up, when I'm just laying in bed, I actually use color. And I go through all my chakras and I imagine being enveloped in red light, then orange, etc. And I just move up through all of them until I just feel very balanced. Then I have a lot. I'm kind of insane. So because I'm very sensitive and I feel so much. So I feel like I just need a little bit extra tools. So that's usually the first thing. Then I have this red light box that I like, and they actually use them in spas and salons. It's actually really good for your skin and hair. But I started using it when I came home from the hospital and from rehab and everything because it's good for cellular regeneration. So I actually sit in front of a red light. But I actually sometimes with my clients, if they're feeling really unmoored and really like off balance, I actually have them sit in my red light while I do Reiki on them and some guided meditation because I feel like red light is so grounding. So I usually do that for a few minutes. Then I have even more. So then a
Awesome.
lot of times what I'm doing, like, well, I'm getting ready, I'll be in the shower, I have my music going, but then a lot of times I start to see colors again or even shapes. And I'm like, so, like, for instance, today when I was getting ready, I suddenly felt like I was an ice queen and I looked like Storm from X-Men. Like, my eyes were like blue and white and I was all blue and I felt like I had a hurricane around me and I felt powerful. And I'm like,
Wow.
that's my energy today. As I'm Storm, I am powerful. And blue to me represents speaking truth, being very vocal. And other days I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be like a giraffe, and I use different and I'm like orange and brown and yellow, and I have different expressions and feelings to that. Other times I'm black and I'm totally closed off. I'm like, I don't want to feel anyone. I don't want anyone to feel me. I'm totally closed. And other days I'm like bright pink and I'm like, I'm flirty, I am thriving, I want everyone to check me out. I'm feeling like hot shit right now. And so, like, I just kind of will adjust my energy to what I feel like it needs to be that day. And then I don't even have them on right now, but I usually have like chakra bracelets that I'll wear, and I match them to my outfit because I'm that way. I might carry a crystal or two in my pocket. Sometimes I smudge myself with Palo Santos. I actually have a little bell that I like to ring to clear things. And like, for instance, if I'm at work at the library and let's say I've had a negative interaction with someone who's just, it's a chaos machine type moment, I might just step in the back room and I either will physically brush it off, like brush off their energy. I'll shake it off. I'll imagine being a tree with deep roots and the sun is shining on me and it's pushing heaviness down my body out of the roots to let it go. And then I'll imagine the sun filling me back up with strength again. So honestly, I just use my imagination and I do a zillion different things.
I love all that visual aspect that you use. And when you were talking about being a giraffe, I wonder if when you do that, because that brought to me the color of the solar plexus.
Yes,
And
exactly.
and so it's just interesting because I use a process that involves frequencies, And when a body is out of sync, the frequency will change, and then certain colors will resonate for a person to assist them to rebalance. And so I was just thinking about that process and how you intuitively have okay, I'm out of sync in this space, so I get to bring my giraffe in. And I love that. That's so fun for me that you do that. It's fascinating to me to talk to different practitioners and see what they do differently. Isn't it to you, Crystal? I mean, you hear,
definitely.
We've heard a lot. We've heard so many different ways, and that's really cool. So have you ever had a time, Matt, where you felt like you couldn't, I mean, I know you said you turned off the gift for a while. Did you do that because of your own feeling about wanting to turn off the gift, or did you get feedback from people that it was just somehow too much, you're not working or something like that?
You know, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there's a part of me that felt like, am I a little bit crazy? Because as you get older and you're like, wait, why am I having these experiences? This isn't quote unquote normal. And then I grew up in this, you know, a very religious background of being Mormon, and like, you know, some of those things about like ghosts and spirits and all these things, like some of that's a little bit taboo because it doesn't necessarily fit within that box of like heaven and hell and all the things in religion. And I didn't really, and then as I was in my 20s and I was exploring who I was, I actually left behind religion in my 20s, and I came out as being gay. And so, and I think at that point in time, I was just kind of over anything to do with quote unquote religion or spirituality. And I was like, I don't even know if I believe in anything. And I kind of went through that phase where I was like, kindness is my religion. I just do yoga. I go and I just breathe in nature. And I was like that for kind of a long time. And then it was when I moved to Australia that I started feeling ghosts again. And I was like, wait, maybe I do, like, because I'm feeling this and I haven't felt this since I was like 15. I think there's something to it. And then by the time I was 30, I'm like, there's definitely something to all of this. I can't ignore it. And then that just sent me down a rabbit hole of learning about energy. And like, I started having these dreams, I remember at night, where I was always in a woman's body on the prairie somewhere in a long dress and a bonnet. And I'm like, and every time I'd wake up, I'm like, why does this feel so familiar? And why do I keep dreaming about this? And it felt like it was me in another time. That got me down the rabbit hole of learning about reincarnation. And like, so I started to shift into my spirituality. And I realized that, like, because I thought growing up that religion and spirituality were the same thing, but they're actually very different. And I think when I left religion behind, I also thought I had to leave spirituality behind. But I realized in my 30s, like, actually, I'm an insanely spiritual person that has nothing to do with religion.
Sure. Well, a lot of times I think spirituality is more about connection than anything. And whatever that means to a person, connection to source, universe, or things like that. What do you think, Crystal? Do you have, what is your take on?
I still kind of subscribe to the universal net, that we all are just connected. And, you know, what I do impacts more than just me and more than just the people that are, you know, in my immediate surroundings. So I really like the golden rule, you know, just do unto others as you would have done unto you.
I love that.
Because kindness, even when it's not reciprocated, kindness is always, if it's genuine, is always light. I think I said it in this podcast before, but one of my favorite things in all of the world is a saying. I read A Course in Miracles, did a study group on A Course in Miracles. I didn't run it, somebody else ran it, and had a great experience reading that. And one of my favorite lines from A Course in Miracles is, every action is either love or a call for love. And I'm probably quoting that incorrectly, but that's the general idea. So everything is either love or a call for love. And all we need to do to answer either of those is love.
Oh, I like that.
So I do too. I really agree with that, because there's so many, I mean, we all have had traumas and trials and tribulations in our lives, and there's no one that hasn't. And sometimes it looks really big and traumatic, but our body responds the same way to small traumas as it does to big traumas. Our psyche responds to the same way to traumas that are big or small. And I remember when I was going through my cancer experience, I had called a friend of mine, back on the day when we talked to people on the phone. Do you guys remember that?
Mhm. We had a
And
rotary phone in my house.
I know back in the day, and I'm older than both of you. So I remember probably more about phone activity than y'all do. But anyway, I was talking with a friend of mine on the phone and I said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "Well, it's been a tough day and I think I have a cold." And then she stopped talking and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "But wait a minute, you're having a cancer experience. This doesn't matter." And I said something I really believe in. This is not a contest. It's
Right.
not that I'm winning because I'm doing this and you're not winning because, oh, you just have a cold, so that's lame. Because it's still a trauma to us. It's still difficult to us. And it's how we move past that and go through our next phases. And I feel like people who have gifts like you're talking about, Matt, and I can feel it from here that you've got some really powerful gifts.
Oh,
And
thank
those
you.
are and those are the things I think that we can use to shift literally the world. People say that, and I feel like some people say that sort of flippantly, but I really think it matters. And like you were saying, Crystal, that we're putting the love out there, and it's going to stick somewhere. And even if we don't know who or how, then I think it's a huge gift. And sometimes it feels like it's not worth trying. I don't know about you guys sometimes, but sometimes I just think, golly, watch my language, golly, there's so much going on that it could even make a difference. But I know it does. And even if it doesn't for people around me, I get to shift into a better space. And some of the tools you're talking about using, Matt, I'm going to start envisioning animals. I really like that.
Oh, I love that.
I
Yeah,
think it's
sometimes
so
it's
fun.
animals, sometimes it's shapes, sometimes I
Mhm.
mean it's always different.
Yeah, I
And
think it's
honestly, a lot
great.
of times I'll even wear colors to match what I'm feeling that day too.
Right.
So
And I do that too. And like I was kind of referring to with the frequency thing and the colors it recommends when it finds a person out of balance. If I recommend to my clients to wear a color that might feel like you get to wear it that day. Now, some people will look at it that maybe you're lacking in that balance in that chakra, or maybe it's just a strong chakra that day. And I tell people, don't second guess it, just do it. And
mhm.
it doesn't matter. Your spirit is telling you something. And maybe even the people you're around gets to see purple or blue or whatever. And so anyway, I really encourage people to lean into those experiences. And so it's really fun listening to you say that. You were saying earlier that you had seen ghosts. Do you still see ghosts the way that you did, or
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
So it's interesting because I think I've learned some great techniques. I actually usually only feel them and sense them and see them now when I do readings with people.
Mhm.
Because before it was almost like I was being interrupted all the time. I was never sleeping. There's always someone wanting my attention. And I know this sounds weird, but I had to learn how to have boundaries with the spirit world. And I
Mhm.
made it very clear, like, you can only come and talk to me if I'm assisting someone in a reading, or if I'm in and there's sometimes other moments where I might feel something or someone, but like usually it's only now when I do readings. And I think it's because I set those very clear boundaries, because I'm
Mhm.
like, I still have to live my day-to-day life. I have so many things that I want to be spending my time doing, but I will set aside this time when I do readings, and whoever needs to come through and have a message can come through at that time.
I love that. Have you guys ever heard the Roz Hernandez? She does a podcast called Ghosted, and she's a transvestite. I might be saying that completely insensitively, and if I am, I apologize. But she is a comedian first, and noticed that she's sensitive to spirit. And so what she says, and so she interviews people on her podcast, kind of like we do too, and talks about different ghost experiences. And what she says is that you can come to see me, ghosts, but you cannot come into my bedroom. Because she said, I don't want to see a ghost in my bed with me. I didn't want you other places. And so
Mm-hmm.
she talks about boundaries. And I love listening to her because she does talk about the boundaries and how, kind of like what you were just describing, had to put boundaries so that they could sleep and get on with life. And I feel like one of the most productive tools for ourselves is teaching ourselves to feel comfortable or have those boundaries. And And people, the practitioners who have set the boundaries and have tools to feel comfortable, I feel like are the ones that are able to then navigate through the rest of their lives like you're talking about. And that's
Yeah.
pretty huge. Mm-hmm.
She's a drag queen for what it's worth.
Is that okay? And I couldn't remember exactly how things were described, but I love Roz Hernandez. She's pretty amazing.
You're just old.
I am old, and all this new talk. I work at it. I lead with my love, and ideally people hear what I mean.
We feel it.
That's good. That's good, because sometimes I know I say things that aren't the way they're recommended. But yep, I'm old. I get it. Just for the record, I turned 58 on my last birthday, so that's how old I am.
58 years young. You're just a
That's
youthful
right.
thing still.
It's true. Well, and I used to tease that I was 29 for a long time, but when my son became 29, he suggested I at least had to be older than he is. And but after I had my cancer experience, I'm like, you know what? I will proudly claim every year I get, because it's a gift. And it doesn't even bother me a little bit. But I was talking to a girlfriend of mine who's just a few months younger than I, and I said, we're nearly 60. How did this happen? And I'm grateful it happened, but it just goes so fast, fast. Anyway, I digress. So Matt, are you doing anything? I know you said you learned Reiki, and so that assisted you to learn and sort of turn on some of your skills. Do you have any other training or any ways that you're enhancing your skills at this point? Or are you just leaning into the things you've done, or how's that look for you?
Right now, honestly, I'm kind of just doing my own thing. I do my deep meditations every day. And a lot of times, like if I'll have a few extra hours, I know this sounds weird. Like people, when they have spare time, they're like, oh, I want to go watch a show. I want to go do this. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I just want to lay down and meditate for a few hours. That sounds so exciting to me. I want to see what I can tap into, because I feel like I've learned how to tap in to this really deep part within myself. And so honestly, a lot of it is just kind of, I'm just learning it as I go. And I'm always learning new things with each new client. Like details will come up. I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. And then someone will be like, oh yeah, didn't you read this? And like, or this in this book, it's in this. I'm like, no, I had no idea. So to me, it's always like kind of a surprise. I'm just kind of learning as I go.
Right.
And so, yeah, I'm just kind of just going with the flow, what feels correct and what feels authentic for me.
That's really awesome. It's fun to, at least when I have my clients, and I don't know how you are, Crystal, with this. I know you used to be fairly active with the Reiki and stuff like that, but I really love to teach people how to feel comfortable. So if they feel like the spirits are ganging up on them or something, or they feel uncomfortable, I love to teach them how they can bring themselves into more comfortable space. And it's interesting how if we can keep the fear out of it, people will learn a lot about themselves.
Mm-hmm. I agree. In fact, I love to teach. I get a lot of clients who are also very sensitive. They're very empathic. And I love teaching them how to clear their energy and how to boost it and how to feel more protected in their space. So I actually like walk them through, and I have them do the visualization, them doing, and I just kind of teach them step by step. And I love the excitement that they feel. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can actually feel it. I feel lighter. I can feel the energy shifting. I feel more in my space. So I think there's something fun about like being able to teach other people and share what you know with other people and empowering them to do so.
I really agree with that. And I feel like the use of language is very strong. So I usually talk to people about how they feel comfortable rather than protected, just because to me, the word protected brings a little bit of fear. And so I talk to them about, one of my favorite things is to envision a waterfall going around me, in front of me, especially if I'm going to be doing energy work, and I like to have color in it. And I like it because it's beautiful to me, and I see it sparkle and things like that. And I feel comfortable, and I can see through it. And so I'm still connected and part of the world, and I'm still feeling comfortable. And other times I talk with people about going into a literal bubble or something like that, that they can still stay comfortable. So because I feel like, and maybe you guys can relate to this, that if people know that there's essentially an on and off switch with this, I feel like most people feel more comfortable and the fear factor goes away completely. And then I've noticed, at least, the people that feel comfortable will lean more into their gifts and aren't worried about the darkness or dark energy that can come towards them. Have you guys experienced that?
Ooh, that's really good. And first off, I was gonna say, I like that you used the word comfortable. I've never thought of that over protected. I'm gonna have to start using that myself. Um, But yeah, actually, and it's funny because with some of my clients, I actually use water. I'm like, okay, let's imagine that you're like, there's a golden shower head above you, and we're turning it on. There's this golden rain washing down over you, and you're like a little human sponge, like little SpongeBob SquarePants, and you're just gonna squeeze and just let go of what you don't want, let it drain, and then we'll switch it. And I'm like, okay, imagine you have a candle inside of you growing brighter and brighter. This is your personal power. You can turn it up as bright and as big as you want and make it like a fiery shield around yourself or a bubble. So yeah, I kind of will use something similar.
Yeah. How about you, Crystal? Do you have a tool like that that you use with, since you have a different visioning process, do you have something like that that you use?
I really have kind of been married to this, just this opening up the crown and letting the light in. I mean, that's always worked for me. And I, you know, just letting it go and letting it come down and come out my ears and down and come out my nostrils and come out my mouth and come down, come out my fingers, go into my pelvic chakra, go down to my toes, come out my toes, just kind of become like this being of light, you know. It's all this just being fed by this love from the universe. So
that's awesome. I think it's just so fascinating that as you discover that these things look different to you, how you describe some of these things, because again, knowing you for 20 plus years and then realizing that this is a thing for you and watching you discover how it applies is interesting to me. I don't know if it feels like you're discovering things to you, but to me, I sort of like watching what you're discovering.
Well, that's why I'm preaching the good word, because other people, especially teachers and light workers, should know about this, because it's only about 3% of the population that has it. And but I think it's important to know that you may have clients that don't have a mind's eye.
Yeah.
And so asking them to visualize things may make them uncomfortable or confused, or you know what I mean? Like,
and we've talked about it a couple of times, Matt, Crystal and I, and so it's given me a different perspective on what I do, what I'll do in my practice when I have someone like that. And some of the things you're talking about, Matt, with your guided meditation, it sounds like you're descriptive enough that they don't have to vision it, which may take some of that pressure off. I don't know. Would that work for you, Crystal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've done meditations. I thought that picture a such and such was metaphorical. But like, yeah, I mean, if the meditation is good, or if the you know, I hate to call them instructions, but the guidance, if the guidance is good, then it doesn't make a difference. It's colors, you know, I guess I can feel different colors because colors work for me a lot, but I certainly don't see them when I'm, you know, meditating or in my mind.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's just fascinating to me that it's just fascinating to me. One of the things I wanted to bring up, Matt, that you say that I really think is super important is that when you assist people to bring the dark energy out, that you do fill it with light. Because so many people will say, okay, take it all out, and then they leave an empty core. It's going to fill with something. So what is that going to look like? Because it can come back worse. I mean, I kind of look at it as a diet. You know, okay, I'm changing my diet and I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that. But eventually something is going to shift. And if I don't have a good plan in place, or if I don't have something good to replace the things that don't work for me, then it can go pretty well sideways. And so I like the fact that you talk about replacing whatever the darkness you've been able to assist them to release with light. And I feel like that's a huge factor. And so how do you decide what approach to use with someone? So say sometimes you said you use the waterfall with the golden shower head or whatever. And how do you decide? Where do you get that?
You know, this was so funny is I don't decide beforehand. I'm just in the moment, and I've learned to just trust my intuition so deeply that whatever the first thought that comes to me is, I honor that. And because I know that it's not just me alone. I know I have a team of helpers on the other side. I know my grandpa who passed away is helping me. I know I have a team who are assigned to me. I might not know fully who they all are because it's kind of an invisible world, but I can feel them and I can sense them helping me. And a lot of people are like, well, how do you know? Because they'll ask, like, how do you know? I'm like, it's just been enough years of me just trusting the first thought that comes to me and I go with it. And I am such a very creative and imaginative person. I make up new meditations on the spot all the time with people. I just go with it. And I honor what pictures I'm seeing, what ideas are coming to me, what concepts. And I literally just go with the first thing that comes to me. And I kind of like, I just take a leap of faith and hope that it will work out. And it usually, in fact, I would say the majority of the time it does work out. Sometimes it might be a little wonky and then we kind of have to like come at it from another angle and like, okay, maybe that was a little bit of a flop, but let's try again. And that's when I actually will play detective a little bit. I'm like, okay, so I kind of didn't quite connect in the way I was hoping here. Let's dig a little bit deeper and look at this from a different angle until we can full circle this and we can kind of complete this. And I want to make sure with each client that like when we're done, they feel like they got everything they needed. We came full circle and they're feeling very grounded again. I can't emphasize that enough, especially if you're talking about difficult experiences they're going through. People are talking about any traumas they've gone through and removing some of that energy, working through some of the emotion. I feel like it's so important to make sure at the end that they're feeling very grounded and stable again. And again, that we brought light back in its place to replace that. I learned that the hard way because I had one client several years ago and she was telling me something very traumatic and was crying and I kind of moved it and then she left and she was like wobbling and I was like, oh my gosh. And that was when it clicked to me like, I've got to do something to like bring the opposite in and to stabilize people so that it's actually a very beautiful experience where yes, they feel vulnerable, but then we're helping them to find the power and the empowerment in it.
Yeah, and that's huge. I use some physical stuff too, where I offer a piece of dark chocolate to every client I have at the end. Some people don't want it, but I also request that they drink a glass of water while they're still standing there. So that brings them physical grounding as well, because
I'm gonna start using
that. Because that physical grounding is so important. And also I feel like it gives me a few more minutes just to observe, make sure everything was cleared. And that I feel like is huge. Now, Crystal, I have a question for you. When Crystal had a crystal shop called the Crystal Ray, and it was fantastic. But when you had people coming in, I know that there were times where experiences happened and either you had something to tell them or they had something to tell you. Did you have any process that you used to set the intention perhaps of the day, or did you just flow with it as it comes through? Do you remember?
Well, we always did something to cleanse when we opened. So it was usually drums and yelling and hooping and hollering, hooting and hollering. And then we set an intention that we welcome only light and those who are broken and willing to receive only light.
So if you felt like someone came in missing pieces or broken, if you will, that they came in with what they would receive was light only. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say honestly that I can't even think of a time we ever had a problem with dark energy. Because it just wasn't welcome. It wasn't invited and it wasn't welcome.
Right. And back to the teaching things, I feel like that's super important to remind people that they have a choice. They have a choice whether they bring the light or dark in. And my goodness, we've been talking over an hour now as we probably get to wrap things up. One of the things we like to do is to invite our listeners to write in with any questions or comments about the topic to our Gmail, which is Crystal.
mysticdetectives@gmail.com.
Excellent. And so Matt, gosh, this has been so great. We could probably talk for another 2 or 3 hours. At least I could. And so do you have any last minute thoughts or anything you'd like to share with us before we close this out?
I just am feeling very inspired by all of this. And I think everyone has a special sort of gift inside of them. This isn't just something that like only certain people have. I think we all have our own unique gifts that we can share with the world. And it's all about just going inward and finding out what are your strengths and like really discovering who you are and sharing that with people because I think gosh, we all have something to contribute. And I love hearing how both of you do things because it's different than the way I do it. And that's what's so cool is we're all so unique and we all have so much to offer. And so I would just, anyone who's listening, I hope that you will take some time to go inward and find out what are my gifts? What can I share and help other people with? And what can I do to make my little corner of the world a little bit more beautiful?
I love that. That's
I love
perfect.
that too.
We'd love to hear from our listeners. Please contact us at mysticdetectives.com to leave a comment, share a story, or ask a question. As always, we invite you to subscribe, share, and leave reviews to support the podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Stay curious
And keep exploring.